So now the decision's been made. There were four people for this one job, and we've picked one. What happens when you now go to that person and that person, which is not uncommon, has multiple offers, and now you're just one of their choices? How do you handle that?
So the negotiation for a candidate is probably a whole nother talk of what you might need to go into. Um, First off, congratulations on getting to a hiring decision. That's a great thing if you can work through your process and have a candidate. There's a whole lot there around how do you position what your business is, and hopefully through your interview, you answered questions and it showed what your place of work is like and why this is a great team and why this mission is something people should get excited about. I think what's even more interesting is when you have more than one candidate through the loop that you're inclined to hire. And you may recall I said it's really important when you're scoring them and voting, independently vote against them. Do not compare candidate A against candidate B. That will come later. Because if that is the only candidate in the loop, would you hire them is the real question. Because you may not be able to come to terms with your lead candidate, as we were just talking about. And if that's the case, you don't want to say, oh, well, we were not inclined on everyone else because we had our candidate. You then are stuck with, well, what were we really not inclined, or did we just say we only have one offer, so therefore we won't hire them? You want independent hiring decisions. And high class problem would be all four candidates you're inclined to. That's great. Then how do you compare between them? So I've got another sheet in the list in my downloadable tool where you actually, of all candidates as a group, you finished and you were inclined for it. And I should correct myself. The hiring manager and the facilitator or senior leader have that final decision candidate by candidate. Would we be inclined or not inclined? So once those final votes are in, doesn't need to be consensus, you then say, well, how many were we inclined to hire? Now we compare them against each other. And there's another tool that just allows a very simple, who would you hire first in this role? Who would be second? If there's more, third, fourth. And each person in the loop just ranks them. It's not a democracy. I'll say that again. But it's useful information. Based on each perspective, is there a single emerged candidate of clearly we'd all hire number one first? That's pretty good. What happens when you have some dissension between who's first or second or third? You have a debate about that. What's their fit for the role now? What's their career path? And then you ultimately get to, we've got one, then two, then three. We're going to extend an offer to one. We're going to keep warm two and three. We're going to keep engaging with them just so that we don't lose them. But we've got to get to an answer pretty fast with one. So that's generally how you would work through that.
And when you've picked number one, and number one, you go and offer and they take the role and everything's good. Number two and number three may not be quite right for this job or not as good as number one, but you'd still like to hire them. What do you do with those people?
So that's a really important part, especially where the facilitator comes in, who may, or the recruiting manager, who may see many other teams who also have needs, because you have found an amazing benefit. 3 people you'd like to hire, you only have one role. Where else could those people actually go across the company? Because you've already vetted them to some degree. And
Yep.
any other hiring manager still should do some interviews, but at least they have a lot of information and all your notes to bring in. And so you should see where else could you recycle those candidates. But there's also a second time you want to recycle in 2 ways. One is, let's say that you had not inclined to hire across the board. Nobody was strongly not inclined, which is a real
Right.
negative sign of character. But, not inclined for this job family, for this level, in this team. Maybe it's somebody who's great upcoming on their career, but this is just a level too high for them. Maybe they've managed one person, but this is a team of 50. And that's just a bridge too far, but we loved them. Maybe you have some other role in your company you need to hire where it is for a manager of a smaller team, or maybe another part of your company needs that role. So actively think of recycling. This is where the facilitator could come in. There's also the interesting flip side where if everyone is strongly inclined for, say, a senior manager role, maybe that person really is director level or above. Sometimes
Yeah.
titles can be a vague company to company, and it happens where people apply for roles where, hey, we've got a commercial role with there's a $2 million P&L here. I've managed a $50 million P&L. I didn't realize how small this was. So that happens too. And so it's important to think through, do we have someone at the right level? Because if you get it wrong, your comp package is almost certainly not going to be acceptable to them.
Fabulous.